Control tab. It's one way.
But that's just between tabs.
Open thing.
Give me Windows XP.
Alt tab. Yeah. Okay, session.
It doesn't open the other ones.
Okay.
Where's Mike?
I'll show you.
Mike?
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our work session on today, September, I almost said February, boy. I want summer to start over again. September 8th, I don't want it to be winter. Thank you for joining us. Just before this, at 4 o'clock, council met in closed session and discussed contract negotiations and reached consensus to move forward with that in public open session in the future. So that was the extent of what was covered in the closed session, and now we'll begin our work session. First, we're joined by Therese Hamilton of Salisbury-Wacomico Arts Council to talk briefly about the upcoming event that they have this weekend called Riverfest, correct? Okay, thank you. If you want to join us at the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I will be very brief, but just to pass on some good news and a great opportunity to do that. This is a city-sponsored event. You can thank your city for this, working with us greatly, Public Works Department and all the licensing. It's for the Salisbury-Wacomico Arts Council, but it's called River City Arts Jam, a festival of the arts to benefit the arts. So what this is, but our mission is multifaceted. It's not just for SWAC, although that will benefit us. The money that comes into SWAC goes back out in grants for community arts, for children to take arts in school and band instruments, and all those sort of wonderful things. So the more money in, the more money out. So it's for the community, but it also supports downtown revitalization. We purposely are having it at Riverwalk Park to support that. The local economy, because when you support the arts, you support yourself. And artists, youth, and tourism. Our goal and hope is that someday this could be the Spring Fest to Ocean City. River City Arts Jam could be to Salisbury a Spring Fest in Ocean City. We have a beautiful river. Let's bring life to it. So on Saturday, September 12th, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., we have entertainment literally every few minutes. We have over 100 performers, performing artists, and up to 30 art booths, an amazing kids section, beer and wine tent, and also inside the hotel lobby, cafe, and an outside patio restaurant, festival foods, and artists. If it is inclement weather, we move inside. So it's a rain or shine event. And we ask you to support this. If everybody gets on board, we have space for nonprofits to have booths as well, then we can see this grow and become what we hope that it will be. So calm down. September 12th, Saturday, for any time from 10 to 7. Bring your kids. It's so cheap. $25 for a family of 4, special, $5 per child, $10 per adult. You can't go to the movie for that. So come bring life to the river and bring the river to life, thanks to the Salisbury City Council and all of your efforts that we are a community alive for the arts. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a website that they could go to get information on tickets?
Yes. www.getswac.org. You can buy tickets in advance, but you don't have to. You can buy right at the gate. There'll be 2 admissions, one on the river walk bridge, and then one at the main gate by the La Quinta Hotel. You can pay right there. We have a bounce house for kids. You'll see all the activity going on. And I have some flyers I'll leave here. If anybody wants one, I'll just leave on the chair up there. Is that good?
Okay.
I'll bring some to you? Okay.
Great.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have an add-on from Colonel Mindshine and the Police Department. Mr. Stevenson or Mr. Mindshine, whoever wants to.
Colonel, can you come forward and share this with the council? Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We had an officer, we have officers occasionally leave employment, the city that break their contract. The city police department, we do have a 5-year contract. It does change from time to time. Generally speaking, every time we have an academy class, the different costs, things like that are figured prior to the individual, bringing the individual in for employment, and then we figure those in. In this particular case, the officer paid the amount that he owed in full. And with the amount of money it was, I thought it would be in our best interest to approach the council to ask if that money would be put back in our training account. On other occasions, the officer will engage in, the contract allows him to engage in a payment plan. So that would be maybe something to discuss down the road as far as how we might want to handle that. But it's usually a monthly payment or every so often payment that they arrange in advance. So we haven't really approached that. It usually just gets put back in the general fund. But since this is quantity money we could use this year to send another person to the academy, I thought I'd approach the council and see if we can have that put back into our training account.
So that'll go along with the discussion about grass cutting fees and insurance reimbursements and all those kinds of things that should be pretty systematically moved back without.
It is. The calculation in this particular case was simply looking at the cost of the academy, the cost of some of the training, cost of the application process as far as psychological, different medical costs that were incurred by the city for employment purposes, and we were asked for reimbursement for those. A lot of the equipment that we can reissue, for instance, the radio, different equipment like that, in a lot of cases the gun belt, things like that, they can all be reissued, so we don't necessarily charge them for that because we're reissuing that back out. But a lot of the equipment, we cannot reissue it.
Right.
And of course, the training costs, the only way to recoup that is through the contract.
And what's the amount of this?
Well, the amount on this particular case is $2,904.
Is there council consensus to do that budget amendment to move that? those
Yes,
funds?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel.
Mr. Stevenson, you'll prepare that.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next is a discussion about single versus double stream recycling. Council discussion and Mr. Mold. I see we have Ms. Pollock with us as well. Okay.
I'm on full agenda.
Was it the Mike Mold show again?
Almost.
Good evening, everyone. There's been some discussions in terms of our recycling program, how we can modify it. I know I've had some discussions with Councilman Spies. He's always had a big interest in the recycling in terms of things. And part of the discussion here is this single versus double stream recycling. But I thought maybe just kind of go through where we're at right now and some of the issues that are coming about as we look at recycling and what our options are.
Let me interrupt. Before you do that, could you give the audience and the council the definitions of each, if you're not already going to be doing that?
Well, single source or single stream would be to take everything and you throw it in one bin. And then you take it to a facility and they sort everything out. Double stream is basically portioning out part of that stream that may have more economic value if it isn't contaminated by the rest of the recycling. For example, in our case, we technically have a double stream in that we collect cardboard separately from our other recyclables. That's where you get the double stream type approach. And then as you go further and further, you can split those streams up and how it's delivered to the recycling facility, which in our sense, we curb sort. We sort at the curb. So what the resident sees is they put the recycling materials into their bin as a single stream, and then we at the curb sort it. And I'll explain why we end up having to do that. So oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure that people don't realize that we're not taking the large black dumpsters, if you will, the large black receptacles and throwing everything into those.
Oh, no, that is correct.
That's a whole different thing altogether.
This is, the program that we have is a voluntary recycling where people do take the materials that we want to recycle and put them in their separate bins. So we're still using the bins, and then you have your trash. There are programs, as Mr. Spies mentioned, that where they basically, you put out all your trash in a container, and then it goes to a facility and it's sorted out, and the recyclables are pulled out to maximize that recycling effort. But in my mind, that gets pretty yicky.
Yeah, it's a long way off for us, too.
Yes.
actually.
I have a question.
Sure.
You just said something. You're saying in the big dumpsters, residential dumpsters, you all put the trash?
No, there's your regular trash can,
Yeah.
and then the recycling bin is how we sort it out. Yeah,
Okay.
There are some places that do that, is what he was saying. We don't do that.
So we're going to continue to put garbage into our black containers, if you will. garbage and trash that cannot be recycled goes into the black containers. And those things that we do want to recycle go into the blue containers, if you will.
Right.
So that's where we are right now.
So,
I thought you meant the big one, black one. You mentioned black,
yeah.
I just thought you didn't want in there. I said, no, you didn't.
No, that's where,
Yeah,
that's
that
where I
was-
didn't want anybody to get confused.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah, we really messed that one up, didn't we? So, with our current program, we have our voluntary participation. It's not mandatory within the city. And like I mentioned, we have a dual stream where we collect the recyclable items, which are your bimetals, your tin cans, let's call it, aluminum, plastic bottles, glass, and paper. And then we have the second stream, which is a separate collection of cardboard. We do the curbside sorting. So as you see, the guy pulls up to your curb, he basically goes through your bin and then sorts the materials that I mentioned into separate bins within the truck. And then those are hauled to the Wycomico County landfill, where there is deposited in separate bins. And the reason that happens is with the county's recycling, they have, you can go to the Walmart or wherever where they're sorting, and then you sort and put it in those bins. So they need to have the materials sorted, so it's combined with their recyclable flow. And then they package it and then transmit it to a repurposing facility. So there's no cost for recyclables delivered to the county. We don't pay any fees on that, other than e-cycle, which are special collections that we do. And we've tried to minimize that program as much as possible, working through Goodwill as far as that. But there is some units of that have to be paid and hauled out. Our FY16 budget for recycling is $181,000 and $181,178. $146,778 of that is the salaries and benefits, or 81% of our budget for the 3 employees that we have that run our recycling program. The remaining we do some advertising, publishing type things of brochures, and of course our fuel costs and maintenance of vehicle costs that are associated with that full budget. As an example, our recycling tonnages for the most recent quarter, our fourth quarter through June 30th of 2015, was about 113.27 tons. So that average is roughly, if you want to look at, about 500 tons per year. Cardboard in that quarter was 7.63 tons. Plastic was 22.47 tons. Aluminum, 7.27. Paper, 35.04 tons. Metal, 2.6. And glass, 38.26 tons for that quarter. So, looking at those type of things, it's interesting the changing dynamics of the recycling industry. Because of certain conditions in the market, we are seeing commodity prices declining for recyclables. Whereas you used to get a lot of money, a good income back for recycling, that trend has changed. There's a couple articles which I did a research on. I can send that to council. One's from the Washington Post, where they described American recycling is stalling, and the big blue bin is one reason why. It's sort of where the success of recycling is becoming one of our problems in terms of generating revenue for it. And then the Wall Street Journal had a good article, recycling becomes a tougher sell as oil prices drop, where the difference in the cost between virgin plastic and recycled plastic, that cost advantage is shrunk because of the price of oil makes the virgin plastic cheaper. So ironically, due to when we had prior higher oil prices, that increased the processing costs for recycling facilities because manufacturers made their plastic bottles thinner and aluminum cans thinner to cut down on their shipping costs. So now to process the same amount of plastic, you need that many more bottles that have to be handled. So it's a function of that. The other things that come into play is paper volume is dropping off. As you know, newspaper subscriptions are declining, so you don't have the volume of that paper. China's market is declining So the demand for their market for paper and cardboard is declining, so the price has dropped. As an example, cardboard has decreased from spring of 2014. It was around $115 a ton. As of the spring of 2015, it's down to $70 a ton. Cardboard volume is up due primarily to online shipping. More people, use Amazon and whatnot. So you're getting a lot more cardboard boxes. Glass is one of the biggest problems. It's always been part of recycling, but it has little to no value. That's due to the different colors of glass that's involved. A lot of glass ends up getting ground up and used as either a pavement, adding to pavement, or sand, getting to a sand consistency. But that's one of the problems. There's no market for that. Just not enough uses for it at this time. Your bimetal cans are also dropping because of aluminum alternatives that are out there. A good example would be you used to get your tuna in a can. Now you can get a little aluminum foil pouch. And again, that's the manufacturers looking for a way to cut their shipping costs. So you're seeing those kind of alternatives. So I like the idea when you were young and you want to impress your girlfriend, you take the can and crush it on your head. Now your girlfriend can do it. It's so much thinner.
As if she couldn't before. Now you've talked a lot about the market declining, but it doesn't address the cost savings of not having it in the landfill and not having to have additional landfill space and all those things, which is probably one of the best reasons to do recycling.
That is correct. I mean, like I said, the county does not charge for recycling. They have a cost associated with that, but that's covered in terms of the fees they charge for their landfill tipping fees. And again, that factors in terms of overall volume.
But if we added all the tonnage that we recycle and calculated what the tipping fees would be on that, that would tell us our savings, correct? Or close.
To an extent, you would have to go through that analysis on it. The Wicomico County, the latest that was on the MDE site, their volume in terms of total recycling, which is waste diversion and the Maryland Recycling Act materials, which are the items I had mentioned, glass, plastic, paper. Their tonnage as of 2013 was 85,000 tons. So you look at our 500, it's not. It's a percentage of that in terms of where it is. But that gives you an idea. That's where you would really look at how your savings on the landfill tipping fees would be. And a lot of that comes from a lot of manufacturing facilities where we get to count the recycling percentage that they do. Example be the giant grocery store. In the back, they have one of these big presses where they take all those cardboard boxes and band them up. That goes to that number that gets reported. Even though that may not necessarily go to the landfill, it gets recycled back to a manufacturer, but we get to account that. So one of the things in terms of looking at versus the single and the double stream, to our advantage, it would be nice not to have to do the sorting. But going to the county, that is our only option, is to sort it before it goes over there. We looked into an option in terms of our cardboard, which we do collect separately and could be then just diverted to another location, and talking to a local recycling facility. And the possibility there is that we could negotiate an agreement with them where whatever the market rate is, we would get a certain percentage refund back. Because of the way the market is now, they wouldn't be able to give you a set fee. It would float, and then we'd have to do some verification of what the going rate is. And there's some different registrations. You can buy a subscription where they'll quote what the going rates are for recycling commodities. The other thing in terms of going to a non-sorting type approach would be, there's another recycler that does do a sorting facility, but some of the initial discussions we have with them is they would charge roughly around $50 a ton for that service. So we would dispense with the curbside sorting, take the load to them, and then they would do the sort, but we would be charged for that.
Would that be regardless of the commodity prices?
Because that's a cost for them sorting it. We're basically paying for them to do that service for us. And they would not take glass. So we would still have to deliver it to them with one load, but have to still sort for the glass because of the glass not having any value. So we would still have to do those double trips and still running to the county landfill. I looked at the tonnage that I mentioned about that fourth quarter. Based on a $50 per ton, of those items that could be taken for sorting, which would exclude cardboard and glass, that would run us about $3,370 a quarter for that service if we would do that. So that's kind of where we are at in terms of proceeding, if you had some ideas or what you wanted us to look into and pursue. But the most viable at this point would be looking at if we wanted to take that cardboard that we recycle and take it to a vendor that may give us a cut for recycling that.
When we're talking about, if I might ask, when we're talking about that cost, you said $3,300 a quarter, was it?
Yeah.
What would the offset be in man-hours and fuel?
Or the fuel wouldn't probably get too much of a saving because we still have to make the journey over to the county to get rid of the glass.
Right.
As part of that. The only other savings would be the hypothetical of how quickly the crew would be done. But I think that one of the issues we'd have to look at is, we'd still have the three-person crew.
Well, we usually have two.
And then, well, we have a recycling coordinator and then we have two drivers. So that's our three persons, whether those folks would then be repurposed to something else if they would get done in a day.
Sure.
But that would be an analysis we'd have to go through and do that. Do where we would try a period of time where we would not do the sorting. And again, it would be limited sorting because they'd still have to pull the glass out. So there's still some hand involvement with that and see what potentially those savings would be.
So we're looking at about 162,000 roughly, versus 181,000. And 81% of that is, 81% of the 181 is salaries.
Right.
So we're only looking at trading off, basically, but we're not really trading off. I don't really see where the savings is.
Well, we also have some savings, I think, in when we make that trip to the landfill now, there are 4 or 5 sections in that recycling truck, okay? Each one of those has to go over the scale. And then, well, it goes over the scale for total weight of the vehicle.
Right, but they
And then they
deduct
dump
empty
one of
the bins.
one of the sections, and they go over the scale again, and then do that 5 times to get the truck empty. So that can take up to like an hour. Okay, during that time, during that entire time, the truck is running, the person's in the truck, and then we've got the 20 minutes back, 15 minutes back into town to get back to where they were recycling to begin with, just to continue the route. So those hours of the engine running, I think, are what we could see as an improvement in what we're doing now, as well as those man hours. Because if you're talking about just going there and dumping our glass, bing, one shot, you're done, you're out of there in 5 minutes, as opposed to the up to an hour to do it, depending on what the queue is, how many trucks are in line doing it at the time. So that part of the analysis, I think, would give us a little bit more money and a few more man hours. I mean, using that commercial provider, I think that my estimation was like $2,800 in fuel costs and about 200 man hours. And the 200 man hours is a chunk of man hours. That's a tenth of a person's annual work. Roughly, we spend 2,000 hours a year in a full-time job. So that's 200 man hours. It could be, that public works person could be working someplace else, cross-trained or not. It could be in the same, you could be mixing routes or whichever the case was to get it all done at one time. So yeah, I think that would require a little more, a closer examination on the analysis side.
Yeah, I agree. If in proceeding forward, we'd have to do some kind of a time study, and we'd have to work something out in terms of trying to do the time study where we wouldn't have to do sorting, because if we didn't, we're going to have to take it somewhere.
Yeah.
Because the county wouldn't accept it. So that would be something as part of analysis. We'd have to work with the vendor where they'd be willing to do that. And then, look at what those pros and cons in terms of that. But that kind of gives you the background on what the potentials are. I guess the message going forward that we're trying to project is, one, we like the idea of not having to hand sort. It's a safety issue. Certainly more of the efficiencies come into play. But the other thing that has to be considered is recycling, I think, is, at least in the near future, is not going to be a money-making issue. It's going to be something that is environmentally friendly, has not because of the landfill volume savings in terms of returning sustainability as the way you have to look at it, but that comes at a cost. Because the markets, we've either been so successful at, we've just swelled the markets up, and they're, until other methods are come out as far as reusing those type of commodities recycled, you're going to get some fluctuations right now.
And we are mandated by the state, or the county is, to about, what, 17, 18, 20%?
No, the state goal as of December 30th, 2015 is 35%. And that's a county goal. It's not the city. It looks at county overall. The diversion rate just for Maryland Recycling Act materials right in 2013 was just under 42%. So we've met our goals in terms of the department. It's going forward and trying to move that up.
I think a huge part of that probably comes from the city of
City,
Salisbury.
because Camden.
Yeah.
Now, you said you pull out the cardboard, but not the paper.
The cardboard is a separate collection. So that's why it's a separate stream, a separate truck that goes around, so we don't have that mingling issue that we got to deal with the glass.
Monday is cardboard.
Monday is cardboard day.
But not the paper. So
Right.
the paper, when it gets wet, it's useless. So we're probably losing most of that.
Yeah, I mean, typically what they'll do is they have the bin and they put their glass and bottles and cans below, and then they'll set the papers on top. And sometimes they'll bind them with string or something like that so they don't blow away. So they don't necessarily would get contaminated from the material below, because the paper would be pulled out and put in a separate bin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it rains, you're going to get some of the wetness in terms of the top pieces of it. But I don't know any way around that unless you get into covered bins. And my experience with those is, they have the ones with the fold over. After a little while, they're busted off. Yeah.
Right.
So in terms
First
of that.
windstorm that blows them down the street
Yeah.
right after you empty
Then
it.
you recycle the bin.
Plus your recycling will diminish, because
Right.
people are going to get frustrated and not use it.
And not use it. And then the other thing you definitely don't want is you don't want them taking the paper and put them inside a plastic bag, because that messes things up. So those are the options that we kind of have out there. I prefer, at this point, at least exploring the cardboard option, get some return on that, since we're sort of already set up for that. And then we can explore trying to get a time study if we can find a way to go through a period of time where we have a place to go with unsorted material and see what kind of cost savings we may get there.
I think we can also, we did have some success in reaching out to at least one nonprofit to get their cardboard, and that's become a big source of cardboard for us. That was Habitat
Yep.
for Humanity. Can we continue to do that with other nonprofits?
Sure.
Great.
Absolutely.
And even churches and whatever, because, that goes in their trash very often
Mhm.
and just goes to the landfill and gets buried. And, but if we can reach out to those folks, I'd be happy to provide the service, I think, or maybe we could provide the service to collect this, but it'd be, it'd pay for itself in the end.
Okay. All right.
Is there anything you need from us?
No, unless you have any other direction you want to give, we can try to proceed in that manner with those two items and see what we come up with and report back to you.
Thanks for going there.
Thank you.
Might as well
Next.
hang around.
Yeah, yeah. Surprise, my phone's again. Next is the MOU with Maryland Broadband for fiber downtown, and we have Drew Van
I know you won't put an R in, it's Van
Dam, yes. I didn't want to do it, although I knew there was something about it that I didn't want to do. And then I have a number to call, Tony.
Tony and
Okay. May have to borrow it. Well, I'll just share mine.
Is my name tag over there? Hey. What do you need? Guess I don't have a name today.
Give me anything you want.
Laura's Jack and I'm
Amnesio.
Hi, Tony, this is Laura Mitchell with the Salisbury City Council. You're on speakerphone.
Yes, hello, thank you.
Just be forewarned. Welcome, and we have Drew and Mike Molds and Amanda Powell with us to discuss the broadband agreement.
Very good.
As well as Mark Tillman, too.
And Mark Tillman, yes, and the council. So, all right, Mr. Molds, you're on.
Well, basically, we had a meeting with Drew and Tony and Mark to discuss the revisions to the memorandum of understanding and some of the drafting notes that Tony had provided in terms of the MOU. And we had a good discussion. One of the important things was clarifying for the public works side of it, and then I'll turn it over to Mark with his questions that he had on the legal side, was to firmly or get a good description of what the city's responsibilities are and what Maryland Broadband will be doing in terms of the installation of the facility. And the discussion as it had evolved was that with the Main Street Master Plan, what the city will be doing as part of its contract will be providing the conduit placed in the streets for the, I'll call it the main feeder or the blue line, and then the individual lines that will peel off from the handholds that the main line goes through to the different buildings. And what I requested to be done is the exhibit that will be part of the memorandum of understanding will have illustrate what that limits of art is. And Amanda has some 11 by 17s to kind of show you what has been provided by Maryland Broadband on that. One of the keys is the Main Street Master Plan, as it was originally scoped out, goes so far in terms of Route 13 down to Mill Street. Maryland Broadband facilities, in order to get Maryland Broadband there, in addition to making use of when we have the street excavated to install the conduit, also needs to reach out below Market Street to get to the fiber optic cable to provide the internet capability there. That is outside of our scope of work. So what we're going to, and the second part of that is that the work on the Maryland or the Main Street Master Plan is progressing from Route 13 to Mill Street. The connection for the fiber optic will come from Market Street, so it'll be it starts at the wrong end of the kind of thing. So we won't get that fiber optic activated until after the second phase is and I don't want to get into that. The first, we'll call the first phase Route 13 division, and then second phase from the plaza, we'll call that. And then potentially a third phase or part of the second phase will be going up division. So a lot of this infrastructure gets put in. The other thing that was important to us is that this project is going to be constructed by a contractor that's used to doing utility work, water lines, sewer lines that we have involved, and they'll be running electric conduit for our lighting in terms of the amenities on Main Street. They will not be a fiber optic expert. So while we felt comfortable with the installation of the conduit accesses as a request by Maryland Broadband to lay that out, but the expertise involved in running fiber optic, which is a specialty art, would be done by a separate contractor and Maryland Broadband with their expertise would contract that person to come and lay that in. But we're taking advantage of the construction and the excavation of the utilities on Main Street, where the cost savings is going to be for this, to get the actual conduit in. And it's just a matter of pulling the fiber optic and working out the details with the individual connections. So the memorandum of understanding on page, starting right at the very end there, line 34 on page 1, outlines those responsibilities for the city and what we're doing and what Maryland Broadband's responsibilities are to do that. So they will contract with a contractor to install the fiber optic line. They will oversee and inspect the installation of fiber optic lines and the service lines where that expertise is needed. They will also provide technical support for the city for any questions from the bidders and the contractor regarding installation of the conduit. Because you don't want to have sharp bends in the conduit to be able to pull this thing through. So they're going to provide those type of services. All that is part of the quoted price, I'll call it just the 197,000 that was talked about. So that hasn't changed any in terms of where we are. But that was where we wanted to make very clear going into this thing, what we're supposed to do and what Maryland Broadband to make this thing become a reality. Anybody have any questions on the building side of the thing? Okay. I'll turn it over to Mark then to discuss the questions and the discussions he's had with some of the legalese.
Yeah, I think that our meeting the other day was pretty fruitful, and I think that some of the things that we were concerned about have all been addressed at this point.
Could you use your mic a little more so
I'm
that
sorry.
they can hear you on the phone?
One of the issues, of course, was when we're going to be basically doing some type of bill of sale or easement over to the broadband cooperative, and the agreement really was that to the extent that this project is done in phases, that we would do that conveyance in phases, that it wouldn't be done up front before it was completed. Right? I'm looking for the nod. That was my understanding. And then the other issue was with regard to the liabilities and obligations. I was concerned because Maryland Broadband was basically saying they were not going to have any liabilities or obligations. And so what we decided would be a good compromise there was, to the extent that the city obtains any of the money with strings attached or requirements from the state or any other organization, that basically that at that point will be a reopener, I think was the word we used, and I'm going to draft some language to do that, that will enable us to discuss at that point when the money comes in, you know, which of those obligations they might be willing to accept. You could be talking about obligations, you know, not to discriminate, various things, whatever they might be. And so whatever the city is bound to in order to get that money, obviously, to the extent that they're operating it, I think they should be bound to, but that was the discussion there.
Aren't
And
some of those already in here? Like the
some
non-discrimination
are.
clause I saw?
Some are, and there may be no additional strings attached, but to the extent that there are obligations that Maryland Broadband would actually be in charge once we turned it over to them, we want to make sure that whatever obligations we have, that they also have. You know, not just to, you know, pay the money, because obviously it's the city's debt to do that, but it's whatever that, we don't know at this point.
Do you mind if I add to that?
Yeah,
Mark?
go ahead.
And I think that we had that conversation because we weren't certain what liabilities meant in an open-ended manner, but when we talked about it, we realized that what you were trying to be concerned about is our strings and other entities, and we just assured that when the time comes, if that time comes, we'd be more than happy to reopen the discussion and see what those obligations are. And we just wanted to reassure the city that, you know, that we have projects that we have done with many of the agencies of the state of Maryland, with the federal government, USDA, others, and so it's not something that we're at all concerned about. We just wanted to make sure we understood what we were signing up for ahead of time.
Right.
That's all.
Just so that the city's money wouldn't be jeopardized by
Indeed.
that type of disagreement.
Indeed.
And
You're used to meeting those requirements, those
Yeah,
non-discrimination,
we-
and all the
you know,
other conditions of contract.
Indeed, indeed.
state.
You know, we were a subrecipient on the state's $158 million BTOP project, worked underneath that. We do stuff with USDA, EDA, so no, we're fully comfortable with that kind of thing.
Okay.
And the other issue that was discussed was with regard to warranties. The language that was in their proposal initially basically said that there would be absolutely no warranty of merchantability, but, and this is kind of a technical thing, they had actually agreed that they would maintain and operate the system in a commercially reasonable manner. And so that's the language that we're going to use. And even though they won't be bound by, you know, maybe statutory type warranties that are out there, the language that they are agreeable to should be sufficient. Because this agreement says that if once the city does turn this over to Maryland Broadband, to the extent that Maryland Broadband is unable to maintain the system in a commercially reasonable way or unable to operate it in a commercially reasonable way, that the city at that point could petition the court for return of the easement, so that we could go out and find a contractor who would do it in a fashion that would be commercially reasonable.
Right, I read that. Now, the return of the easement, would that include anything that's in the easement, i.e.
Oh,
the
yeah, I mean,
equipment?
in other words, we're paying for it all
Right,
anyway.
right.
We're trusting them and their expertise to maintain and operate the system. And this would only be if there was some kind of crazy total breakdown that it, it wasn't working. And we've got this huge investment and it's just, they can't fix it, it's not working. We would have the right at that point to ask the court to say, whoa, we're going to try and find somebody else to do that for us.
Yeah, I know we're putting it in and paying for it, but we're also selling it to them with this, and that's why I was
Right.
asking about.
And that, in that
Does
original
that come-
proposal, there was no warranty, no
No
obligation, and no way for us to get it back. And that, we just want to make sure that we don't get stuck with a lemon, not that I expect that to happen. I know, it's,
Ms. Shields,
Yeah, I
you
have a question. I looked at line 138. It's in the yellow. And it mentioned also third-party approval. The third party, could you explain to me about the third party that seems like Maryland Broadband can sell or do something with third parties? Do we have permission to choose who the third party is? We don't have permission to do that, do we?
that has to do with the rate setting,
The
correct?
rate setting,
Yeah.
explain that, 138, see if I'm understanding correct. That's the rate setting, but what about the third party where Maryland Broadband can go and,
We,
what
we
line
had
that is.
we had a discussion about that at the meeting.
Yes.
I was concerned that the city would basically be turning over this asset and have no say whatsoever
So what
in the
happened
rate
then?
setting. And what was discussed was the fact that as a cooperative with 90 members at this point, and that the city would likely apply to be a member along with the Tri-County Councils and the other entities, and that entity or that group sets the rates. So in other words, I guess at this point, you should understand that I think it was 5 members of the Tri-County,
Okay,
the 5
yeah.
Tri-County Council members are on the board. There's 58 for-profit telecom companies that are on the board. Am I?
There are 58
Members, I'm sorry.
the telecom members, right.
I'm reading
Right.
that, and 20 other governmental members. And then basically the way that he said that the board breaks down is that what I think 5 of the Tri-County Council,
Right, there, of the
5
11 board,
members.
of the 11 board seats, 5 are reserved for the Tri-County councils. There is a seat for each Tri-County council region, so that makes up 10 of the seats. And you can be of any entity to run for one of those 5 seats. And then there's an at-large seat on the council that can be a member representative from anywhere. You could be
so
from.
that's what mean the third party, where the third party would come in?
well, no, what I was originally saying was that if the city is going to turn over this asset, that we should have some say in it. And so, and I guess theoretically, I'm not sure that the legal impediment there would apply if the city did have some say. I'm not sure about that. But basically at the meeting, I think it was the consensus there that there was a sufficient community and governmental representation that we wouldn't be in a concern that the rates would just be skyrocket as they might if we were turning this over to a private for-profit entity.
And then just to be as clear as possible, and Tony, if you have anything to add, that would be fine. But the rates, the wholesale rates that we charge our members for carrying services from one end of the state to the other are approved by our board of directors. And of course, any member of the cooperative, always has the opportunity to talk to the board or to voice any kind of questions or concerns or make proposals or solutions that they want. So that's sort of how the mechanism works.
And I'm assuming that these rates are set in a way so that they're, not discriminating against one member versus another. In other words, it's based on usage and things like that in order.
Well, indeed, and not only that, I mean, our entire business model is designed to promote open access and non-discrimination. So we are required by our our founding to treat all of our member entities the same way.
And you're not subject to Public Service Commission.
We are,
Oversight.
we are not, for several reasons, but largely because we don't provide end user services. We provide wholesale services to ISPs that go ahead and then do provide end user services.
Right, okay. I have a question. Starts on line 134. There is no revenue share derived from lit services delivered to the customers in the fiber system. What does that mean? What are lit services?
Yeah, so, and again, I'm going to start out, as I always do, with an apology for the arcane nature of this industry. So the difference between lit services and dark fiber is I'm going to try to explain this as in a way that makes sense not only to me but to others. That dark fiber is, think of dark fiber as glass in the ground. It goes from any 2 points, and in a dark fiber relationship, an entity would contract with, say, Maryland Broadband, who is the carrier in this case, and they would pay a lease fee for using the dark fiber, okay? What the product that they are receiving is literally the right to connect their equipment to dark fiber at 2 different or more places on the surface of the earth. Then it's the customer's responsibility to invest in the equipment, the expertise to run the equipment and to calibrate it, and they then, quote unquote, light up the service, and they can run information across it at any speed they desire, and other than maintenance, they are responsible for all of the quality related to that service. And in the case of what we're talking about here, that would be, let us say you had a company that had 2 or 3 office locations within the downtown, and they wanted to lease dark fiber strands to connect them in a campus environment, connect all of their own equipment, and then run services between the 3 locations. We're not providing any services at all in that situation. We're just allowing them to connect their equipment to dark fiber, and what they do with it is up to them. Lit is entirely different. In a lit service, the customer, let's say it's an ISP, the ISP has a relationship with a company's, an example might be Cogent. And say they receive the internet from Cogent, the actual transit, the actual magic of the internet. They have a relationship where they buy that from them in a place like 111 Market Street in Baltimore, or at Filigree Court in Ashburn, Virginia. And so they have their internet right there. But what they want to do is they want to deliver it to somebody in the gallery building. So what happens is they buy what we call transport, but they buy a lit service from Maryland Broadband, which means the fiber that we control between Salisbury and Northern Virginia already exists. We've invested, literally millions of dollars in equipment that allows for the magic of carrying signals from one place to another. And so they are buying 100 meg, a 300 meg, a 500 meg lit service from us, where we take the internet that they're getting from Cogent in Northern Virginia. It gets handed off onto our long-haul optical gear in Northern Virginia, and then we transport it across our network from machine to machine to machine, and then it gets to our hut out by the baseball park, and then runs on our local fiber to West Market, and then it interconnects with the system that the city is building and then runs into the gallery building. And so when they're buying a lit service from us, we are responsible for carrying it from Northern Virginia to Salisbury and back again and constantly. And that lit service is manageable through our equipment. If it's 100 megs today and they decide they need it to be 300 megs tomorrow, we take care of that. If there's an outage, if there's a problem, if there's a hiccup, all of those things become our responsibility to fix. So in the longest way possible, dark service is when we provide fiber to a customer and it doesn't use any of our equipment. And a lit service is when we provide high-speed transport services and the entire thing runs across our equipment.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Okay. So I'm kind of equating it in my mind in layman's terms so I could remember as the dark fiber is the wholesale part where it's not using any of your equipment. You're just selling them the transmission. And that's the part that we do the revenue share on.
Yes.
The lit part is more of the retail end where you're dealing with actual customers and they're using your service, like coming into the store versus buying everything.
Yeah, I think I'd actually move it back a step. I would say what they're doing is retail, what we're doing with our lit service is wholesale, and what we're doing with the dark fiber across the system is actually like raw materials.
Okay.
Just to make, as far as what the city's revenue sharing, when my initial read of this, I assumed it was going to be greater than it probably ultimately would be, because the city would share only in the dark fiber system set up within the city's cables, not the connections to the Western Shore or other cities. So it's a very limited market that the city would be sharing in, and probably not. Certainly, the reason to invest this money wouldn't be for the return you're going to get from dark
Sure.
fiber. I think that's pretty clear.
No, more from
The
the
dark cable.
return that we'll get from the people that are here for
Right.
that fiber.
What the revenue sharing that the city would get would be, for example, if a group of doctors' offices within the city system wanted an internal, communication means within their company.
Right.
And that would just be, it's out there, but it's not going to be the bulk of the business at all.
And there may be some other applications too.
Now, there's another clause that starts on 146 that's about all fees and payments are to be paid within 30 days of receipt of payments by MDBC members. That is going to be an accounting nightmare for them and us. I don't think Mr. Cordry is here, but, so if you bill monthly, let's say, and everybody paid their bill but 5%, and then the other 5% paid intermittently throughout the next month, and this is an extreme example, you would be writing checks all month long. I was thinking maybe it should be something more like quarterly, like we do with the franchise agreement for Comcast, and that there's some cutoff that you have, anything that's received by the 5th, you have to pay within 30 days of that per quarter, and not every 30 days. 30 days from receipt could be a nightmare for them to send and for us to track.
Well, they only pay based on what they do receive. And that's so, I mean, you're right, you could certainly hold it and make payments on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, I think it just feels like it makes more sense to me because,
I don't think.
or that there's some window in there because to say you have to remit it to us within 30 days means every time they get a check. They can't accumulate them and send one lump sum check for any period of time. They're going to be writing checks potentially every day.
Well, I think, obviously, I think that if we'd be willing to work with you on a scheduling thing, but I would anticipate that that we'd only send one check a month, and that it would be itemized by each of the different participants that contribute to that check.
Right.
So I appreciate your concern. The 30-day window doesn't strike us as an undue accounting burden, but if it would be a problem for the city and you'd rather us do it on a quarterly basis, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that.
Well, the monthly isn't even bad, but the way this is written, that you have to send the payment within 30 days of receipt means you can't wait and accumulate once a month and send a check at the end of the month for everybody that paid during that month. Because if I pay on the 1st, and then you don't pay until the 5th of the next month, you're beyond that 30 days.
Yeah, your point's well taken there. I think we need to clean that language up.
That's the answer.
Okay.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine. All right, I wasn't viewing it that way.
Yeah.
I got it, okay.
I just want to give you a little more leeway accounting-wise to
No.
not have to write a check
I got
every
you.
time you go to
I-
make receipt of a payment.
I appreciate that, okay.
Mr. Tillman, did you have more things that you wanted to highlight in the document to us?
No.
I will, I had a couple of things. One is, it's referred to in here as the Main Street Master Plan project. And I didn't think that that's really what this was called, because we have the Main Street Master Plan, and then we have this project, which is a part of that master plan, but I thought we were using a different name for this, and that's referred to it that way over and over again. Jake had noted that at some point in the past, and I was gonna ask him about it today, but he had to leave, so maybe we just need to check with him and see if that's the appropriate name that we wanna call this. I'm thinking just Main Street Project or something and not Master Plan Project.
Were we confusing that with the downtown master plan and the Main Street master plan?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I think we were saying that at some point along the way, and really, we should have been saying Main Street master plan.
I think there's room for confusion there, so maybe we should straighten all that out.
The drawings, the construction drawings that we have identifies it, the Main Street Master Plan.
Main Street.
I just
that-
remember
I-
him making a comment to me
Okay.
after one of these meetings that, so.
Yeah, I think we're right with Main Street master plan, just
Okay.
at some point, we were saying downtown master plan and
Which
shouldn't
is
have been.
part of the master.
That's something entirely different.
Yeah, okay, that could be it. I just had something in my head that I felt wasn't sitting right. Then on line 59, 60, 61, talk about turning over all rights forever. I thought that was
That's
something that we
something, yeah.
didn't want to do, but you're saying that there is that reversion clause if there's a complete failure on their end, so
Right.
is that offsetting, basically?
Right, I mean, that's what the specific reference is in there. And actually, in the conveyance, it's gonna say that it's subject to that right, that the
Okay.
city would have to petition
The court.
for return, yeah. I mean, I guess theoretically, if you wanted to, you could make it expire after a certain number of years too, but,
No, as long as we have recourse
Yeah.
if something goes catastrophically wrong, that's really what I was looking
Right.
for. But that seemed, that language seemed pretty final
Yeah.
and comprehensive. So it made me a little nervous as I read further and came across the other provisions. and
yeah,
it
that's,
was a little better,
those are the
but
provisions, the reversion provisions.
On page, I'm sorry, I don't know what page it is, line 99 through 101, talks about notifying the appropriate person or the authorized representative. Should we be a little more specific there and say the city administrator? It says that at the end of the contract, but we found in the past, like with Comcast agreements and other agreements, that if you don't say the specific position and, or something, that sometimes it just gets sent to the city and nobody ever knows where the notice went, there's no tracking it. And I think that being more specific about who it should be addressed to make sure it gets to where it needs, it gets the attention it needs would be beneficial. Let's see. Sorry. And then on 109, talks about having a representative and an employee contact. And I thought maybe we should put make that a local representative, because we don't, like we've had with other issues, we want somebody that's close by that can address it, or that we can reach quickly. I don't mean that somebody has to move here, but there should be some local number that doesn't already live here. On 134, 135, I already asked that question, sorry. That was that lit thing, the big old, what does this mean? And the 30 days. Sorry, I'm just going down my list of comments. Okay. 152, there's a segment there that starts about, in the event that a member does not provide payment and service is discontinued, Maryland Broadband shall not be responsible for the past due amounts for that member. And it goes on to talk about the city collecting. If we don't own and operate the fiber because we've sold it to them, I'm not sure, Mr. Tillman, what standing we have to pursue collection of a past due amount.
There was no provision in there that would entitle the city, even though we would be entitled to half the revenue. So to the extent that MDBC was not willing to go after the individual, this contract would just give the city the right to do it, so that it wasn't abandoned.
Okay.
They're basically saying that they'll split it with us, but they're not going to take responsibility to get it.
Right.
They may, I'm guessing they would normally, but if their contract with us isn't going to indicate that they're going to make an effort, then this just was so that the city didn't have to just say, oh, well, they don't want it, so we don't want it. This was
Right.
just a backup plan, really.
Now, is that something that would be like a clean and lean? Would that be leanable for them to not pay that?
No,
I'm
it wouldn't.
just not
It
clear
would
about
just
where
be
that-
like the city collecting a debt. That's what
Okay.
it would be.
Okay.
It would just entitle the city to get it if they didn't,
They choose.
because we're partners in a very small piece of this business.
I guess that's what I wasn't really sure about, because we're getting a percentage of a commission, if you will, but we're selling it to them, and they own it, and they'll operate it.
Right.
So, but the fact that we're getting a percentage makes us partners?
Yep. Not officially, but this contract would allow us to go forward and collect it. We'd still have to share with them what we
Right.
got. But it's
Less
just.
fees?
Huh?
Less any fees to collect it?
Obviously. Yeah, I think
Because
that's what.
that doesn't, I don't think that's.
No, it's in here. That's
Is
in
it?
here, yes.
Amount collected, okay, you're right, you're right. Okay. Small typo on 164, in red, it says except at, and it should say as. Or 164, I'm sorry, did I say 150?
You got,
71 has a typo also.
171, yes, there's a 0 there at the beginning of the line. And then on 165, just after all the red, it says all ownership right. I think that should be rights. I don't want to go through every one I'm just trying to find anything that's significant here. Okay. Okay, you answered that one. On 704, jumped way ahead, page 21. In some places, it talks about granting access as long as there's, it doesn't reasonably interfere with the grantor's improvements or use of the property. But in some places, it mentions or city operations, and others it doesn't. This is one where it doesn't.
What line did you say?
704 and 709.
Okay. Easement agreement.
Yeah, and then,
We'd be fine with adding that, both spots.
okay, that's all I had on this. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
No, my questions were answered, my 4.
Must have had some of the same ones.
Mm-hmm.
Good, thank you. Mr. Tillman, did you have anything else?
No.
So, what do you need from us, consensus to move this forward
Yes.
to a legislative session? What's the time frame? This is, obviously we're behind.
2 months ago, I mean, right away.
So do we need, I don't think it'll be ready to get on Mondays. Or could
There
it?
aren't that many improvements.
Could be.
Tim, did you have, oh, sorry, Tony, did you have anything that we just went through that would be a sticking point, that it couldn't be ready by Wednesday?
No, not
tomorrow?
at all.
Okay,
Not at all. I think we're in agreement.
okay.
So, Mark,
Yeah, we can try to get it on for Monday.
Okay.
There aren't that many edits.
Yeah, even if, this is a document that's in there and the correction follows before
Okay.
Monday. Not at the table, hopefully, but
Okay.
before Monday, that would be fine,
Yeah, we'd like to get it on as soon as possible. So.
yes. Okay, thank you very much. Council, I'm sorry, is there council consensus to move that forward?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think I heard it, but I want to
Yes.
make sure.
Well, thank you all very
Everything?
much.
Thank you.
And,
look forward to it.
and I know it may not be my place to do so, but I just want to say at this juncture, how much the cooperative has appreciated everybody at the city that has helped put this together in such a short period of time.
Yes,
Indeed. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
I think I hung that up on my shirt. All right,
so Mark, you're gonna make the changes? Do you have the?
Yeah, I'll try and do it.
Okay, I figure you had a good, clean copy to work off.
yeah, I can email you what I have too, so that, don't mind my commentary.
No.
Just the changes.
You're fine.
All right, change order for AMT, continuing with the broadband. This is the, change the contract with the engineer to put all these drawings in ink, not pencil, correct?
That's correct, yeah, now that we've
Using real programs.
worked through the MOU that we're gonna do it, we've contacted AMT, who is our designer for the system, and the critical issue is making sure that putting all these conduits and everything, it doesn't run into something else and it all can work. So the sketch that you see in front of you is an example of what we were given. AMT will work through that and make sure from a three-dimensional view that everything can fit within the area. And again, we're dealing with a conduit, plastic conduit. I think, is it 2-inch?
Yeah, well, there's 4-inch, the
4-inch
main
for the
lines
main
are
one.
4-inch, and then there's 2-inch, and then 1.25 inch for the services.
So Amanda, I'll let her go into details of what AMT wants to do, but I think we feel they've given us a good, reasonable price at this late stage in the design to make these changes so that we can get this project out to bid.
And that was after they stopped throwing rotten tomatoes at you, right?
Well, originally, as you know, we were going to attach Maryland Broadband's design to the set of plans as an addendum and bid that. But then it became apparent that they could not profile it and do some of the work that we really need AMT to do. So what you have before you, those drawings, is what Maryland Broadband is able to produce for us. So the blue circles are the hand holes, which are essentially, if I can relate it to sewer, it's like a manhole essentially. And then the yellow dots are where we're going to provide stubs at different properties so that they could get services eventually. So we're not, with this contract, with the conduit work, we're not going inside any buildings. We're just providing stubs outside the building, inside the right-of-way, so all of this conduit work is in the right-of-way. That leaves it up to Maryland Broadband or their internet service providers to actually work one-on-one with business owners and figure out how to get inside their buildings. That's a major effort, and that's not something that we wanted to undertake as part of this. We're getting the conduit in place for them, and we're setting them up for it. But as you can see, even on this drawing, you know, I look at it and I see places where I would want to move a handhole, make some of the service lines shorter. So AMT is going to actually design it. They're using this as a guide on where the facilities need to go. They're going to look at the depths, make sure we don't have conflicts with other laterals, with water meters, with trees, with everything else that we're putting in. So they also need to make sure, as Mike said, that the depth is consistent, that we're not going up and down and doing things that would prevent us from pulling fiber in the future. So they will actually design this entire system. What you're seeing in different colors and colored pencils, they are going to draw on the contract drawings, look at the depths and profile those. So it would be the handhole locations, the conduit locations, the service line locations, and those stubs. They've also included meetings between us and Maryland Broadband so they can get their questions answered, and incorporating the specifications that Maryland Broadband has provided into our spec book. They also have priced in cost estimating to compute the quantities and do their final cost estimate of this conduit work, which we like. We would like to have a double check on the numbers. The budgeted amount from Maryland Broadband has been included in this year's budget. It is allocated this year, but this will give us another double check before we go out to bid to make sure we're in the right ballpark. So we usually don't have change orders on a work session agenda, but because this related to the MOU, we wanted to explain this to you and see if you had any questions, and then this is tentatively scheduled for next Monday's council meeting to award.
The example that you look at is if you ultimately you give this to a contractor and he's got to come up with a price.
Right.
We give him this, or we give him good detailed drawings. So I think the price of doing this change order, I think, is going to come back in savings in terms of the contracted price, because the contractor's getting a lot better idea of what he's putting in the ground.
Right, and they don't have to go and have this done.
Yeah.
Right.
A related question, because I apologize because this is redundant. The 4-inch conduit, what percentage are we actually utilizing?
I mean, in terms of the fiber optic
Yeah,
volume.
I mean, what capacity-wise, does that tap us out, or is that?
No, yeah, it was small. We had asked Bill Garrett, and he had told us we had ample room for the future. So I'm not sure I've ever actually heard a percentage, but we could find that out.
I'd like
Yeah.
to know what
Yeah.
that is.
Sure. Sure, we'll find that out.
I know in the initial discussion, there was room for growth.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember room for growth, but I'm talking about capacity-wise. You
Yeah.
always like
Sure.
to know what capacity.
I think
yeah.
this is what, 155 strand or something like that, and it could triple if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but they had the ability to do that.
You know, the
We'll
hole's
find that
open,
out.
my point is the hole is open.
Right.
You don't know what technology is coming down the line.
Right, and that's why it's 4-inch, because initially we were talking 2-inch, and we said, go all the way. Do as much as you can do now, because by the time we get it in, it'll be outdated.
With any luck at all, the technology will make it smaller.
Right.
One,
Well, yeah. We-
one little thing I just wanted to bring up is that the key of rushing here is to get this conduit in the ground and to get that timing set and to get that paid for. There really is no compelling reason to rush this contract with broadband. So, I mean, you don't have to do it by Monday because, I mean, after the conduit's in the ground, you could decide you'd rather have Comcast put this cable in if you wanted to. I mean, the important thing is to have the means in place to get the cable in the ground, and that's what they need to have done, you know, by Monday.
Yeah, I mean, to Mark's point, this change order is the time-sensitive item, and really the council consensus that you're moving forward with an MOU.
Yeah.
You know, if we had come to you today and the MOU was failing and it wasn't working, then this change order would have been thrown out. So, but to Mark's point, you know, you have some time on the MOU, it's the change order that's
And we
highly
can make
time-sensitive.
those changes, but you don't have to rush to pass it. You know, there might be a good reason not to do that. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm comfortable that they're moving together, because we're doing a change order for 120, no, was it 250, excuse me. Because of Maryland Broadband.
Right.
And if we were to do the change order and have them do all these drawings, and then something happened with that MOU, we have nothing but a $12,000 bill. So, you know, while I don't want to rush it to the point that we have issues with it, I don't think the changes were significant. I think we all pretty much agreed on that, and personally, I'd rather see them move together, but I'm open to discussion.
I don't think it's not significant changes, it's not,
Right.
I don't see any reason to hold it
Right. I don't see any reason for it to not move, so.
That's fine.
You good with that? Okay. The only question that I had about the connections at the service positions, the yellow dots, right?
Yes.
So there'll be multiple buildings that connect from one that kind of spoke out from that hub.
Yes.
And
Yes.
these hubs, you said they're inside the easement. Will they be accessible without having to just disturb anything that we're doing?
So it, yeah.
Pull the sidewalk up or something.
Right,
so-
right.
Right, so it'll be almost not as big as a water meter, but a stub up and a little cap on top. So there's an empty conduit that is actually flush with grade that'll be capped, you know, so water's not getting into it. But that is where they would access it to then go into the building. So
Okay. But they wouldn't run it like out the top of it, right? It would be.
they could possibly run it out the top of it, yes.
The idea was that you get the conduit would come up and you're gonna have this little stub. It's capped off, and then at such time when they mount on the wall of the building, the transition that would then bore into the building and get into the inside guts is where they make that connection. So the conduit will be able to pull up the fiber optic through the conduit, then they'll have another connection where that will tie in and then go into the building. That's later on, that's what Maryland Broadband will do. We just get it up out of the ground, so we're not disturbing our sidewalk and
But
our
that's on the
utilities.
building side of the sidewalk, it's not in the sidewalk.
That's
it's-
right.
Yeah,
It's
up against-
attached to the building
yeah.
essentially,
Okay.
almost like a,
Like
if
an
you,
electric
like
service
an
when they
electric
bored-
meter, yep.
When they bored underground and they put the meter, or the box there, but they didn't, with the.
Yes.
line
Exactly.
They would
goes
likely
in,
run other
connection.
conduit up to some box that then goes through the building.
Okay, got it. That's what I wanted to understand, that we weren't gonna need to disturb anything that we were
No,
doing for
we're
them.
not gonna do that.
That's the
I
plan.
didn't think that, so,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
rather ask and look stupid than not
question
ask
about
and
it.
look stupider.
I have a question about appearance. Will this have like a little industrial look to it, or is there going to be something that's going to be a little more decorative to it?
You mean the piece on the wall? Again,
I mean,
we're-
it sounds silly, but
I'm
you know,
thinking
we're
of something
looking
like
at-
you would see like
we're
a
looking at
cable
making
box
this look-
with,
yeah.
you know, what you would mount on the house where you have the cables going in.
Okay.
It could be something as simple as that, but
It's like a router.
it's still your, until we get around the telepathy kind of thing. where
Okay.
We don't need anything.
I have a question.
Just don't put branches on it.
Okay,
There you go.
yes, yes. Make it look like a tree.
I have a question, just out of
Like a cell
curiosity.
phone.
I have Mill Street, where at, how far Mill Street, what part of Mill Street? On this map, because I can't remember what you all said.
Sure, so it's actually going all the way to the intersection with Mill
Right.
Street, so that,
Intersection of what?
at Mill Street, Mill and Main Street, so,
Yeah, but how far up Mill Street?
it does not, it doesn't
does
go
not.
up Mill Street at
Just
all.
another
It just
block. Mill
ends,
Street just stops.
it just stops right there at
Okay.
Mill and Main Street on the,
Yeah.
on the east side of the intersection.
Okay.
Yep,
Intersection of Mill and what?
and Main,
Okay, I got you.
yep, so
'Cause that's
it
the
stops
extent of
right
a
there.
project.
At the
It's not,
light.
is it crossing over it's not crossing over the bridge?
It's
No.
not now, no, it's
Okay,
not crossing the
gotcha.
bridge, and it's actually not even crossing Mill Street. And sometimes
I
they were
gotcha.
talking about crossing Mill Street,
Yeah,
but they
yeah,
backed
that's-
off of
I
that.
just wanted
Because
physical.
we get across the
remember.
river.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Council consensus to move the
Yes.
change order forward? Thank you.
thank you.
You all done?
All right, and we have one in between, and then you,
I get a rest period.
we should have put these in a little different order. maybe. Quarter mine, Sean's just sitting back here for a while. I apologize, I would have moved that one up when we heard you earlier.
This is probably just going to be slightly more complicated than theirs, I'm sorry.
Do you have pictures for us? All right, go.
Okay. This is actually to accept funds. This is actually an annual award from the Problem Solving Court, State of Maryland, passed through Wycomico County. It's for $6,000 to provide overtime funding for our police officers to conduct home visits, is what they're referred to, for the drug court participants in the drug court program for the adult drug court in Wycomico County. And it's also for the chief, authorize the chief to sign an MOU, which basically it just lets the awarder of the grant know that we'll cooperate with, we'll conduct the home visits, and that we'll cooperate in sending the invoices in, and that we'll staff the drug court visits and so forth. And basically, for those that may not be familiar with it, is there are officers that are sign up for the overtime, go through some training as to what to look for as far as the home visits go, and the participants in the drug court know that it's coming, know that what to expect, and the officers conduct, and it's basically just to make sure they're in compliant with the order of the court and the parameters that are set forth in the drug court program, just to make sure that they're so it benefits the participant or the participant in the program, and it allows for hopefully lack of recidivism coming out of the program and successful completion there.
How many are in the program right now?
The program is capped at 50 for the adult. I'm not sure what their staffing is or what their recipient is right now, but they have don't know when the last time they graduated some folks from it. I can check into that, but they're capped at 50. So and I
Yeah,
think they're pretty much.
I think the council would be interested in finding out
Sure.
a running total of how we're going with that
Yeah,
program.
it's very
quite
successful.
important, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, very,
Yeah.
as far as I can tell you, it's very successful. I used to be involved in it more so than I am now, but I can get those specific numbers for you.
Super.
You
Thank
just do city residents, correct?
Well, it's actually Wycomico County. There are, the majority of the folks, I believe, are city residents, but our officers that sign up for the overtime only go out and do home visits with city folks that are residing in the city. So if that person were to happen to move in the county or whatever, then the county also, they also participate in this. They would do the home visits for the county folks.
Okay. Council consensus to move that forward, or any questions?
No, it's a great program. I think we should support it. Definitely.
Any? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you.
And back to Mr. Mold. And Mr. Cordery, apparently. Just in time. Welcome. Welcome back.
I'm here as a support role for Keith. This is an accounting thing. I get,
Oh,
like
I
a
thought
move.
you were gonna.
No, as a movie actor, I just get top billing, so you notice that.
So who's the straight man here?
It depends. We can exchange it back and forth. We can keep it.
Yeah, pretty sure it's gonna be Keith on this one. Okay.
We identified some projects that were completed with funds from operations that could have been funded from some of our capital funds, depreciation reserve fund and the impact funds. And so in hindsight, we have thought that they would best be funded from those sources and have presented a resolution, or two resolutions, one to transfer some impact funds to fund the projects that are listed in the schedule that's attached, and then another resolution to move some funds out of the depreciation reserve fund, also known as the revolving fund. And so that fund is used for maintenance, whereas the impact funds are held for capacity. So Amanda has identified some projects that increase capacity, and so the funds that are being transferred from the impact funds are for projects that enhance capacity, and the projects that are associated with the transfer from the depreciation reserve fund are for projects that are providing maintenance to our water and sewer infrastructure. That's about it. There's two resolutions. We're transferring the amounts that are stated in the resolutions, and the funds would be transferred from those revolving and impact funds into the water sewer fund to reimburse the funds used for projects listed.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
What percentage of the water and sewer revenue is put into revolving fund or depreciation fund?
We happen to have the number. It's not really. It's like there's a 5 cents that's pulled out of a rate tier. So 5 cents per every 1,000 gallons was in an ordinance years ago. Was targeted, and that relates to about $127,000 per year as an average over the last 6 years. So we're seeing about $127,000 travel from water and sewer sales into the revolving fund or depreciation reserve fund. It's called, depending on where you are, two different things.
Right, I wasn't sure if that had changed. I saw that ordinance. I didn't know if it was.
Yeah, that's about what it amounts to. It's about 127,000 a year.
Okay. And then on the projects that are listed on Schedule A for the, which one? This one's the impact fee.
Okay.
This would be more for Mr. Molds. Were all of these projects ones that were used in the calculation of the EDU fee?
Yes, yes.
Ms. Pollak?
And one of the criteria with being impact fees and the capacity fee was, as Amanda went through and divvied these up, they had to be ones that were related to that capacity fee.
But when I mean, I know they're related, but I know there was some back and forth, maybe my first or second year on council, about what should and what shouldn't be included, and some projects were kind of iffy. And I'm just wondering if they were actually included on the list that we used to calculate. Ms. Powell?
I know that with, where you have a project, a certain percentage of that project can be impact or capacity related. So not necessarily was the whole project impact related. And that may be what you might be thinking in terms of looking at a particular project and how that was divvied up in terms of percentages.
So to do this exercise in choosing projects, we went back through the ordinances and resolutions that were used to set the capacity fees.
Okay, great.
So all these projects came off of, I used the most recent one first and then backed up. Ordinance 2248, which was in June 2013, had the bulk of these projects. Ordinance 2213 from August of 2012 had one additional one that still applied. And then Resolution 1744, back from December of 2008, had one other one that could apply. So we took these to be very defendable. We took the projects right out of those ordinances. And in those ordinances, it actually said what percentage could be allocated. And then, as you know, these capacity fee projects are usually some of our larger projects, larger long-term projects. So that's why you'll notice in Schedule A, really the only thing that we can sort of reimburse or reallocate funds for is typically the engineering design of. The construction funding for all these capacity fee projects came from other sources, grants and loans, ARRA money, bonds, that type of thing. So really what came out of operating was only engineering design, and you see that reflected in the schedule. So it wasn't a huge amount that we could transfer, but yes, all of it, I could give you the reference of any one of those projects, what ordinance it was referred to in and what percentage. So what you see as far as the dollar amounts took into account whether it was 50% capacity related, 20% capacity related. That's been taken into account when you see those numbers there.
Okay, excellent.
Is this consistent with past practice?
I don't think it's been done very much.
That's why I asked the question, because this is my first one of these, so let's.
Mine too.
I want to dig in.
So it hasn't been done in 4 years, I don't think.
Is it based on past practice?
I think they gave it a rest, let it accumulate some, and it accumulated a nice sum, probably a little more. So some of our reserves, we knew they were there, have rested in a capital reserve fund.
Right.
And maybe it's gotten out of kilter some, where that they're overfunded and operating is a little underfunded. So we're just moving some funds around to straighten that out.
Okay, this is not.
No, this year we did a good job of Public Works is maintaining a very good forecast of CIP and relating it to the funds that are available, and we're trying to, in the long-term CIP plan, incorporate the use of those funds as we go. So we use 2.9 million this year in these funds as part of our capital spending.
Okay.
So we're making use of them. Of course, now with this transfer and with that, we're going to be back down to closer to the minimum levels that we wish to establish there.
And what is that roughly?
Well, this isn't a formal minimum established by any financial policy. But just roughly that we were looking at 1.5 million as a minimum amount in the revolving fund for maintenance, and 500,000 each in the impact funds, which is a total of about 2.5.
Okay. Not just to express as a comfort level, just mentioned.
Sure. I mean, it's a minimum. It's not necessarily a target.
And that was my next question was, where does this leave the funds, our funds,
Right.
fund balances, that's what I'm trying to say.
Including the appropriation in FY16 of 2.9 million and this $1.1 million transfer, we'll still be at 4.1 million in those capital funds compared to 2.5. So we're still, still over the minimum that we defined.
Having been through the budget process once, I'm older and less hair than I used to have.
And more scared.
Could we put this on a little bit? Could we put this on like so you get an update, like what do we foresee for next year based on the CIPs, et cetera?
When we start the budget, or?
Yeah, just
or-
where we ended up and where we see things in the next. It's always good to look forward and see if we see something, if something goes, when that bubble goes, you need to know what you got.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, maybe, I'll make a note in the financial health, we'll hit on that.
yeah, just as a, not a formal big report, just an update.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I may be alone in this, but I have a little concern that 5 cent per 1,000 gallons, given the small amount that we're able to transfer into that depreciation or revolving fund, the balance that you're telling me there makes me a little more comfortable, but I'm still not sure that we're doing enough to really offset that. I keep thinking back to the audit comment that we get on Mitchell's Pond because of the depreciation there, making it look like the fund is negative, and I don't want to be in that situation here. And I'm not sure how that compares to what our actual depreciation should be calculated, or what that amount is. So maybe if you looked at that and you don't have the answer right now, I don't expect you to have an answer right now. It just seems like, I'm not sure that's enough that we're setting aside for
The
depreciation.
flow,
Yeah.
for the flow. Mhm. Would you like to revisit that when we discuss the budgeting for the water sewer fund, you think would be a good time?
Yeah,
to do
that's
that?
fine.
Yeah, because
That's not far off.
with the new wastewater treatment plant, we might have some, we can pull it all together perhaps and try to prepare some updated forecast.
Yeah, and that'll be a good time too, because, and with the new plant, depreciation will change.
Yes.
So that'll be a good time to look at it.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Shields?
I think, well, I will say this, I'm glad to see that after the election that they're gonna have the goal-setting session. You may want to have that ready for that, because it's right before the budget.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's something we can discuss, prior to, because I think the department is gonna be invited.
'Cause if funding depreciation better, OPEB, some of the other things as part of our goals, it's a good time to know is before the administration starts putting together a budget, that we have those discussions. That's an excellent point. Thank you. So now you have a deadline.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Consensus to move those two resolutions forward?
Yeah,
Yes.
Consent agenda?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Mr. Steves? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice evening, Mr. Moulton.
One more.
You too, Mr. Moulton. Oh, yeah, that's all right, you're still not moving. Gosh. Mr. Pilot, thank you, welcome.
Good evening.
Step right up to the microphone.
Good to see you.
Oh, wait, that's the circus, not the zoo.
Well, thank you all for taking time to review our proposal this evening. I appreciate it.
If you recall, we had, when I got started here and got acclimated, we did an engineering reorganization. It was an opportunity once we had see how things operated to make a couple changes, and they've worked very well for us. With the recent retirement of the curator at the zoo, I think there was a realization of Ralph that how much she was doing, and an opportunity there to try to spread that workload around, provide some opportunity for more development of a career ladder, and reorganize and distribute some of those tasks, and for the zoo to operate. And of course, Ralph's had 2 years at the zoo to get a good feel for it. So he sat down with me and asked if he could put together a reorganization plan in terms of the positions that are outlined in our memo there. And he would like to pursue that through a budget amendment request. And as you might remember, the reason it's not a funding issue that we got to deal with, it's that the budget identifies these specific positions in those grades. And that's why we have to come with you with a budget amendment. So. If you had any questions of Ralph or I.
Just a couple, of course, right? Sorry. One is, I looked at the pay grades and the steps, and I know some of it is because of people that are in those positions now, but it looks like, particularly between the vet technician and the collection registrar, it's like maybe there's some, oh, wait a minute, what's the current? I don't know if that's the person that's moving to that position. It looks like maybe we're creating some compression issues that we've experienced in other departments, and that concerned me, whether you took that into account.
And what we've listed here are really illustrations. We'll go through a selection process, and I don't want to predetermine any of that. It is our goal to try to give employees the career ladder option and to make this an advancement career opportunity where possible. My hope, though, is that we can create more of a collaborative team. So I see leveling out the pay grades as an opportunity to create that management team of co-equals. What we've tried to do with, say, the registrar position is make that a policy developer but not implementer. And then the lead keeper position will implement that policy, and we'll sort of have that balance in check between two people, making sure we're doing what we say we should be doing to meet our requirements.
The other concern that I have, Mr. Tillman, you're probably going to have to weigh on this, we might not be able to answer right now. With the state legislation that passed last year, was it last year or the year before?
Last year, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
I think it was. Anyway.
It wasn't this last budget, but there was the budget before, wasn't it? With the,
I think it was legislative, I think it was the 2014 legislative
Yes.
session. Because, I'm sure it was
Yeah,
actually,
okay.
because Rudy Kane was still there. So, it required that anybody who has a zoo has an animal control officer that is overseeing several aspects of the care of that. And I'm not sure, that was the language that they used in that legislation, and I'm not sure whether we have to have someone with that exact title, or if there's room for an equivalency. I mean, they didn't specifically say that. This was, bill was pretty slammed together and then pulled apart and slammed back together, so. But just to make sure that we're in compliance with that, since we're reorganizing and retitling some of these positions, if that has to be a subtitle or whatever, so that, I mean, really, it's your job. It's the zoo director. But I don't know, if the state were to look at us, would they say, yes, you're in compliance with that, or no?
Our attempt to respond to that was to add that to the job description of what we're calling the collection registrar, because that's the person who will primarily be responsible for our licensing, for our meeting our requirements for various permits associated with our animals. The bill that was introduced dealt with maintaining wild and dangerous animals, and in addition to the usual restrictions related to USDA licensing and some sort of appropriate accreditation within the industry, it added certain requirements about insurance and training of staff. And they did refer to animal control officer, but without, as I recall, reading it, any real specification as to what that meant. So we stated in this that the collection registrar would act as a designated animal control officer to assess our compliance with state and federal requirements. You know, I'm not sure if that meets the legal standard or not, but that was our hope.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we probably just need to get a read on whether that does or not, just so that we make sure, while we're doing this, that we have what they were looking for and don't run afoul.
Right, I think that would protect our interest and our operating capacity long term.
Yeah, we'll check that.
Similar question. From a accreditation point of view.
Right.
I'm assuming that all the requirements are met in the job descriptions as well for these individuals.
It's certainly our belief that what we've done responds to all the necessary functions to meet our AZA accreditation.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Is there council consensus to move this forward after we get feedback from Mr. Tillman, or you
Yes.
get confirmation from Mr. Tillman that satisfies?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's budget neutral, it's just changing positions.
Exactly.
Right.
It will mean an ordinance, 2 readings, and, right,
Yep.
budget amendment.
Nice work. This is going to
Thank
come
you.
out to be a much better product.
I think so, and it allows us to manage our available hours a little more flexibly. We're having to, meet weekend and weekday operating requirements, and we're spreading our staff to try to do that.
Yeah. I also like the idea of creating that career ladder opportunity
Yes.
Yeah.
for longevity.
What is your status now with veterinary coverage?
Well,
Is
we
that-
have.
Very
yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, right, that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, we have I think a long-term relationship with Dr. Doug Nolte, who's been our consulting vet for a while. And he has been, I think, gentle in his fees and time with us. And that was the assessment of the AZA Accreditation Committee when they visited, that we had a very favorable contract relationship with him. And that long-term, I think the AZA will be pressing us to move to more veterinary time at the zoo. And as we move forward, that may be one of the things we need to look at 5 years down the road, is do we bring on either interns from one of the universities in the veterinary field? Do we get more time on site? What we're doing right now, I think, works well for us. We've got a good relationship with our vet tech, our vet. But I think the industry will have expectations for more veterinary time on site monitoring the animal collection long term.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever thought about partnering with University of Eastern Shore through USDA? Because they have,
Can't hear you.
do you ever think about partnering with University of Maryland, USDA, because they have programs, veterinarian, or kids that want to be veterinarians? I would check with that department, maybe they could do an internship.
We will look at that. We've not talked to them specifically, and we've been starting some conversations with some of our other sister organizations, like the Baltimore Zoo, to see what they're doing in terms of internships and veterinary students coming in.
And because they partner with Virginia Tech, I think, because when they leave, get their bachelor's degree, the reason why I know this, my granddaughter wanted to be a veterinarian until she found it. She just couldn't work on dogs. She had to work on all animals. So she got it. But she would have transferred to the school in Virginia. So that might be another college that you want to investigate. That might, in the summer or something, somebody would have to do an internship.
Right.
That's why I'm saying that. Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Nolte now has a understudy, if you will, correct, a succession plan going, because there aren't a lot of vets that do exotic animals, so.
Right. And, yeah, it's a very unique specialty, and we have a lot of demands on it. Tomorrow, we're acting as a resource for the Virginia Aquarium that's transporting a harbor seal from New Jersey down, and if they have trouble or a medical emergency or a vehicle problem along the way, we're a stopover point and would provide emergency support to them. So there's a lot of things that go on that are out of the norm and that put pressure on us and our vet to be responsive to a wide range of circumstances.
Anything else? Thank you
Right.
very much.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
This time, I do have a request for a couple of public comments from Mr. Gaskins and Mr. Boyd, whichever one would like to go first. Oh, is this tag team? Okay. Where's the popcorn? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's okay. We're good at it. Thank you.
Madam Vice President and members of the council, good evening. You have a copy of a letter that I'll read, and then we'll ask for additional comments. And the letter reads, Dear council members, we, the West Side Homeowners Organization, write to express our objection to the Pearl Housing Development proposal of the property located in the area between Queen Avenue, Chippewa Street, and West Road. We're homeowners outside of the city limits whose homes surround or in very close proximity of the property in Pearl's proposal. Approximately 7 years ago, the property under discussion was outside the city limits also. At that time, we appeared before the city council expressing our concerns and objection to a proposal from Blair Rainier on the annexation and development of this property. In that original request for the annexation of this property of the city of Salisbury was a specific request that the property be zoned to accommodate the development of a planned, substantially a large apartment complex right in the midst of our homes. We were concerned that such a development would significantly lower the value of our homes and negatively impact the quality of the neighborhood. Over the course of several meetings with Blair Rainier and the Department of Planning and Zoning, Blair indicated that he understood our concerns and changed his requested zoning level to the property to become R15, or excuse me, R5, single-family residential, and indicated his intent of creating a development of owner-occupied new homes for sale. He even shared with us concept pictures of the homes he'd planned to build. With that understanding, we had no objection to the annexation request. Now, we wish to be clear that we're not objecting to the idea of finding means of providing decent and affordable housing. However, we do object to Pearl's proposal to create an exclusive development of a so-called affordable housing, especially this exclusive affordable rental housing development, and we object for the following reasons. One, the planned exclusive low-income rental development or community will lower our property values. Two, that proposal requires that a renter rent for 15 years before the renter could possibly purchase the home. And then three, the proposal lacks specific information on the amount of equity, if any, the renter would be earning while renting. On the other hand, the equity for investors in this project is highlighted and clearly given. So based on items 2 and 3 above, we were led to believe that the idea of this project being a pathway to home ownership is really a smokescreen to obscure their intent about this rental development. A serious pathway to home ownership would provide for purchase within 5 years and not 15, and include a specific and hopefully a generous plan for the renter to build equity while renting. Therefore, we request that the City of Salisbury not waive the $2,000 per unit that's normally assessed for affordable housing, for your affordable housing initiative. We further request that you not make any other concessions in support of this project, and that you inform Mayor Ireton and ask that he not write a letter in support of this project. If such a letter has already been sent, we ask that it be withdrawn. Finally, we welcome a housing development that provides for immediate home ownership or a very short-term rent-to-own ownership plan with a mixture of homeowners across income levels. Your favorable response to this request is appreciated, and we thank you for providing us this opportunity to state our objections to Pearl's proposal. And with additional comments, and of course, we'll entertain any questions you may have.
Do you have anything, Mr. Gaskins?
As you know, we did come several years ago about this project with Blair. And during our conversations and meetings at the Salvation Army, he was concerned about the community and how the community felt about it. And he came back and he did have the property rezoned as an R5. The families that own property out there, probably the least is probably maybe 10 years and up. They're all homeowners. And none of these homeowners wants their property devalued. We don't mind the affordable housing, it's fine and dandy, but it's gotta be something that's gonna be of value to all of us and not depreciate our homes. And that's what we're asking for and your concern. Okay. Any questions?
Yes, excuse me. On average, just off the top of your head, how long have the residents who are invested in this neighborhood been there?
The average, probably the least is probably 7 years. They recently bought a home 7 years ago. The furthest out would probably be close to 50, maybe a little more.
So there's substantial equity in
Yes,
this
ma'am.
neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That
We've
would be
got some people that have been there well over 40 years in those residential homes. There's very few rentals in the area that we're talking about. There is one development that does have rentals, but they're single-family homes, and they're well over 1,400 square foot. And they have yards and everything else to go with them.
What is the nature of those rentals in the way of maintenance and appearance?
Excellent, because nobody has any problem with it. The gentleman who owns them has the responsibility and has the tenants responsible for keeping up the upkeep of the grass. And all of the houses have vinyl siding to them. They're all well maintained.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. What rental development are you talking about in that area?
Excuse me?
What rental development are you talking about in that area?
It would be Meadowwood. Meadowwood Drive is a predominantly all rental homes.
Okay, that's further down West Road.
Further down West Road.
Okay, yeah, okay. 'Cause I was trying to think in the area,
Yeah.
and I know that,
Up until
yeah.
the school, most of them are homeowners, except maybe a couple on West Road.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And I would like to say that, Mr. Jim Weatherly was the one who had the property. We had talked to Alan Brown, I think earlier this summer or last summer, and he had bought his property back in the 70s, I think.
Right.
Right. And all of the,
Yeah,
that's
Mr.
why I
Weatherly.
informed, that's why I informed
Yeah, Mr.
Dr. Boyd.
Weatherly,
Yeah.
Mr. Hall, and I believe Rainier was the third one, right? Right, Jackson? Yeah. That's the three that own that development. It's exactly behind Wesley Temple Church, and it runs clean over to South and North Delano, and it also butts up to Chippewa Boulevard. The houses along Chippewa, the wooded section runs behind there as well. So that's where they're trying to make this development. So, and we're asking for your concessions here to hold off till we get some answers. Maybe the gentleman will come out and even meet with the community and ask what our concerns are before they tackle this project.
I do want to say, too, I try to keep people informed, although I'm a city council representative. Some of the people that live in the neighborhood are members of my church, so I have to tell them, what's going on. And I think, as I had told before, I am for affordable housing, and we are for mixed use, as I agree with that also, mixed income. And the gentleman that came before us, it's nothing cut in stone because he's in competitive funding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
It's a competitive base. He may not even get funding for this project. But I thought I would be less than a person not to inform the community what the plans may have been in that,
Sure.
Right,
and I certainly appreciate you informing us initially.
Yeah.
And the point we're trying to make is, as I understand the plan and as I look through the presentation online, there is no clear-cut discussion of the amount of equity any renter would receive. And in this plan, it appears that what's being planned is an exclusive affordable housing, and I use affordable in quotes, affordable housing community. And essentially what it appears to me, and as I think about this project and think about the homes on the other side of Chippewa, you know, which is deeper into what we call the Indian Village. If this project went through, then I would think in the next few years, what we would have in this area would be another Indian Village with all low-income renters. And of course, the way this is structured, to require someone to live in a house for 15 years and then perhaps be given an opportunity to purchase it, and to try to spin this as a pathway to home ownership is clearly a faulty plan. I think, so what we're asking you to do is to not support this project in any way because of the negative impact it's going to have on our neighborhood. And it's not going to do much for the folk it purports to be interested in helping.
Thank you very much for your input and for your patience. I know you all were here very early and sat through a lot of information that you probably never expected to hear. Broadband and zoos and all kinds of things.
Most of which you won't take home with you, yes.
You'll check it at the door. I do appreciate it. Mr. Stevenson, if you could give us an update on that project, and I believe the letter's probably already been sent.
It has, yes.
The deadline was today for them to make their submittals.
Yeah, that letter's been gone.
Yeah, so.
I'll share this information with the mayor as soon as I see him.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd certainly appreciate it because it's a big concern for us as homeowners. You know, I mean, there's other property around that you can put affordable housing in it, and it would make people have a value of where they want to live. I mean, but if you constantly come to the minority neighborhood and say, all you can afford is affordable housing, it doesn't really tell minority people that they have a chance to buy a home eventually. You're telling them all you're worth is a low-income housing, and that's what we're trying to get away from that stigma. We want people to be able to buy a house. Everybody wants to be a homeowner, and we want you to be a homeowner. But we don't want that stigma thrown on you and saying, hey, all you can afford is low income. Even Booth Street, the projects has changed their values and upgraded their standards. So they're not going to be pretty much low-income housing anymore. You're going to be paying a dear price to live in Booth Street after they finish renovating. So we want the same thing for our neighborhood. Just like you would want the same thing for your neighborhoods if you had, you know, where you live.
Well, Salisbury Neighborhood Housing, they do have a house on Adventist Drive for home ownership, yeah. So that's the kind of maybe that Salisbury Neighborhood Housing, which is extended all the way up to Nail and Mill Road in the county. So if you do know anyone who wants to purchase a house, Salisbury Neighborhood Housing would be a great place to send someone who wants to build a house, and also they would prepare them for home ownership. So,
I guess one other thing that may not be clear to some of you who are new to the council, or actually most of you, I imagine, are members who were not involved with the council 7 years ago. The neighborhood that we're talking about is actually closer to the center city of Salisbury than Sassafras and other properties that are in the city. So we're in this strange situation where we live much closer to center city, but are not city residents. But, you know, we have a city address and feel like we're in the city, except when we have to
How do
deal
you feel
with
about
things like
annexation?
this. Right, yeah.
No,
And we're concerned about how we can best interact with the city without actually being city residents. And of course, would I be able to get a copy of the letter that you have already sent?
You would have to submit a public information act request form, but that's easy to go through. I'll give you my card.
Okay, would you
take
tell
care of
me
that
what's
tomorrow?
in the letter? What about the $2,000 waiver? Was that included in the language in the letter?
I obviously don't have it in front of me. The only thing I recall the letter said was that the mayor supported the request, and that was simply for the purpose of submitting the application for the competitive funding round, not saying that he was on board with the project to any extent beyond that.
Right.
Certainly.
Can a letter be withdrawn if,
Thank you.
if there's a concern after he reads our letter and understands the community? And, there's 12 of us here tonight. The community has roughly 250 to 300 homes in that community. So there's a very large number of people that we didn't bring 300 of them out here tonight, but, there's an opportunity that could possibly happen. I mean, just to bring people out, because these people own their property and they want their property and they don't want it depreciated. I know I don't.
Well, surely if the mayor were to be persuaded by the comments from the community and the advice of council, he could draft a supplemental letter if he wanted.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you'll let us, I would assume, maybe you'll let us know when this is going to come back up again. Is there any way to let us know that?
Yes, we'll make sure to let you know.
I'll stay in touch with you, but there's nothing scheduled.
Okay, because we thought under the impression that the gentleman was supposed to be here tonight, wasn't he, to ask for the $2,000?
No. All they did was request a letter be sent, or a letter be signed by the mayor to include with their application to the state for these tax credits, saying that, basically that the city has this ordinance or resolution where we waive those fees and support in support of projects such as this. And that's really what was submitted. That doesn't mean that, as Ms. Shields said, that he's going to get funding. It's a very, very competitive process. But certainly that letter from the municipality or your partner in those projects carries a lot of weight in terms of the scoring. So it would.
I would inform the community, since you're here. Also, I think is Osprey, Andrew applying for the same funding?
Yes.
So we have another
Johnson's
person that's funding. It's not in your neighborhood. It's on Lake Street beside Village of Hope. And the ladies stay there 2 years and then they have to find housing. So the same people that built River's Edge is planning, if they get the funding, and they're going after the same funding as this project, for transitional housing for the women that live in Village of Hope. And that's going to be on Lake Street if they get the funding. Again, they're applying funding all over the state. People's applying for this money. So, and it's not only open to the ladies that live in Village of Hope, it'd be open up to other people. And that'll be an affordable apartment house, but it's not in your neighborhood. But that is a project that I'm hoping that the community can come together and support, because those ladies do need to have transitional housing into that type of housing. Because they only can stay 2 years. They only can stay 2 years. Huh?
Do you get the community's input on that? You're saying support it, but do you get the community, feel of the community on the project before you just go forward?
Well, see, it's the funding, but see, it's part of the Village of Hope already owns the land. And it was, when they originally built the Village of Hope, it was supposed to be in phases, and this is one of the phases. But way before I came on, this was the second phase of the project. So that was already basically written prior to me coming. Now, I'm not saying he's gonna get the funding for that either, but that's the proposal that came before us.
This was for 61 units, was it?
61 units,
If you have something to say, we really need you to come up to the podium, though, for the microphone, so that the recording gets in, please.
Good afternoon. My name is James Jackson. I appreciate this opportunity. My house was built in 1977 on Delano Avenue. My wife and I built our house. We're in the county. The house across from me was owned by Mr. Milburn Hall. Not only did he own the 2 lots across from my house, he also owned 10 acres of land behind his house, which is county. Mr. Weatherly owned from the cul-de-sac back about 11 acres of land. And then there is 19 acres of land that belonged to Rayner at the time. My concern is that Esquire, Duke, Dutchess, those are in the county. And so is North Delano Avenue and South Delano Avenue. And I just heard that you have proposed a letter for the 19 acres. I know that Sassafras got an easement so they could run a sewage and septic tank from the school off into that little area that you call Sassafras, which is Marquee. And so that became city. Now, I don't remember at all when the 19 acres that's beyond my property became city, but I just heard you say you sent a letter to the state asking for funds for the city. That 19 acres, unless I know something wrong, unless I missed something, it's not city property, it's still county.
If I'm not mistaken, Brother Jackson, Mr. Rainier had asked and requested annexation for that property several years ago, and 7 years ago, when they started this they wanted to do the high-rise property, we found out then that it was in the city.
It's in the city.
I just have one question for you, Counselor, and I will sit down. My one question is this. Your property is 200 by 225, where your house is. The company wants to build 50-foot lots. That means behind your house, where your back property ends, I can put 4 little 50-foot houses with a 10-foot easement on each side, which means your house can never be any more than 30 feet wide. I mean, how long it is, but that depends on how deep your property is. My concern is that when you consider that, would you want 60 little houses behind your property? And if you don't want 60 little houses behind your property, you can rest assured that Mr. Jackson doesn't want on behind his 200 by 225, I don't want 4 little houses on the back of my property because I can't sell my property. No matter how much my house is worth right now, the minute you put up 4 little houses behind my property will never sell for. I will never get my money out of it. And I wish that you would consider just that thought and ask yourself, if those little houses are behind your house, would you be thinking the same thing? I don't want those little houses behind my house. Would I want those little houses on Quantico Road, where the nice houses are? Would I want those little 4 little houses behind my house if my property was in Deer Harbor? And I would think you would say not. So I'm concerned that the little houses, those little 50-foot houses, 50-foot pieces of property with 10 feet of easement on each side, and a little house that's no more than 30 feet. Because that was the original deal. The Rayner was going to put little houses behind Mrs. West's house and Mr. Morton's house, which is on Queen Avenue, and they have 100 by 225, just like my property, and so they have 100 feet in the back. And on the back of their property, where this piece of property is, they can put 2 little 50-foot houses on the back of theirs. What will Mr. Morton and Mr. West be able to sell their house for? I do thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to clarify one thing, Mr. Jackson. We did not request any money for the city. This was an application by the developer asking for tax credits. Okay, just wanted to be clear about that.
Have that thought in your mind. Would you want
I understand.
4 little houses, and you got 200 feet of property, would you want 4 little 50-foot houses behind your house?
I understand your point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak?
I shouldn't say anything because I think you cleared my point up, but what I was trying to say was, is there any way that a project can get some community input before it's even brought to the council, or whether it be the city council or the county council? Seems to me like a lot of times we hear of projects and they're moving forward, and the community surrounding that project that's involved doesn't get a chance to say very much about it.
Well,
Now,
really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
and that's all I was trying to say, and maybe I shouldn't have spoke out of turn.
No.
But
No,
it seemed like an important point, because if you own property, just like everybody here, and I do own property, I'm not in the city, I'm again in the county, and own several pieces of property that's surrounding that area. And it seems like I said, on just about everything that comes up, the community surrounding the area involved doesn't get a chance to get some input in until it's almost too late.
Reverend Johnson, this is why 7 years ago that I believe that the community should know what's going on around their neighborhood. That's why I did the same thing. I think the first meeting we had was at Wesley Temple. And I think the gentleman that we're partnering with, Rainier, was going to partner with the complex that owned Westbrook Commons. They wanted to put an apartment, so the neighborhood did not want that, so he decided to build, like he said, little houses. I know one of the concerns from one of the residents of North Lane, could you add on to the house? You know, if you bought the house, would you have enough space to add on if your family grew? So that was what I'm hearing. This is why when I heard the gentleman made the presentation, that I informed who I thought, I was supposed to inform, so you all could get together, so the council could hear your concerns. And just like why we're having the curfew meetings, it's let the community to know what's going on in the community. And before, and I agree before, this was not being really done. And now we're trying to be more transparent, the word transparency. So if you need an agenda or something, I think we're online with our agendas and get the information out there. And if I can open my big mouth to let people know what's going on, whether I disagree or don't agree, I will basically let people know, because I think that's the only right thing to do. So I understand, I hear everything you're saying. I hear everything you're saying, because that is my district. I hear everything you're saying, and I understand what you're saying. And this is not cut in stone. I just want to let you all know that. And I can change my mind. I'm not hard to get along with. I can change my mind.
Thank you.
The community input point is well taken, but you also, I need you to understand that the only role that the city plays is in the zoning, to say that this is a housing, or this is commercial, or this is industrial, and which of the housing zonings there are. And the person who owns that property has the right to do with it what they want. The only reason this came to council is because they're asking for tax credits to make the development happen. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know that it was happening, so we would have no opportunity to share that with you. But when they come to us for those credits, it's generally because it's affordable housing or workforce housing type of project that they're requesting funding for, and asking for a support letter or concessions on the impact fees and that kind of thing. That's the only time we really get involved in it, because they have the right to do with their land what they want to do, the same as anybody else. If they're not asking for any credits or concessions or anything like that, then we wouldn't even know about it either. But our agendas are online on the city website, and I pretty consistently, not 100%, I won't say, post it on my Facebook page, and others share it. So we try our best to get the information out. We've now televised these work sessions. They used to be in the conference room and not on TV like the legislative sessions. So we're doing all that we can. I had this conversation with somebody else about another issue today that thought that we were trying to slip something through when no one was looking. And it's very challenging for us to try to seek public input with a public that is often not very engaged. And we do what we can to do the outreach. We make everything as public and accessible as we can. But there is a responsibility on the part of other people to keep check on what's going on. And every week it's sent to the media. Doesn't get a lot of coverage as far as, put in the newspaper, what's on the agenda or anything like that. But you can go to the city website or get on the distribution list with the city clerk, particularly since this issue is kind of in the mix here. And when she sends out the emails for the agenda to the media, you would be on that same list. It's no extra trouble. It's just another name on the list. And you would get that email, so you would know if and when it comes back up and is on the agenda or any other item that may concern you.
I think another thing I want to say, too, we have coffee with the council.
Yes.
We have coffee with the council, and anybody is welcome to come, and we do publicize that, where we meet with the public and listen to what their concerns are and what they want from us and what their concerns are. We've had 4 around this year, believe.
Yeah, I think we've had 6 total. We do it quarterly.
We
in
do it
a
quarterly.
different quadrant of the
So
city.
we have coffee with the council, you have coffee and donuts, and we just listen to what people said around the community. So I think next time we do that, we make sure that I think the first one we had at the fire station on Cypress Street. We had
been
one.
to Manuel Westland, we've been downtown, we've been to.
We had Manuel Westland, we had downtown at Old Thurston Studio, and the last one that we attended was Faith Baptist, because that is city too on that side. So we try to reach out as much as we can to listen to people. So I don't think this is the only council that has actually done that, to try to engage with the public. But if the public won't come, what can we do? And as my grandmother said, if you know you've done your duty and all you can to get information out, what else can we do? But if we have any other suggestions for getting information out to people, there's the churches, we can maybe do a flyer or something. But I think this is a good council, and our city clerk is great. I think we do all I can. I know Tom answers questions, Julia. We answer our emails when we have concerns from the public, and so I don't know what else we can, really do. But since I know you're concerned about this issue, I will make sure that
We're always open to ideas.
The only, I guess, with this particular item, as far as I know, the item came before the council about a month ago, August 2nd, I believe, thereabout. And for you to take the action you've taken, it's been a fast track action, getting a letter out to the housing development group in support of the project within a month. It seems to me that's much faster than government normally works. I'm used to seeing a much slower pace. And so what we're concerned about is, whether or not due consideration was given to the request, especially not knowing perhaps how this project would impact the neighborhood. Of course, we certainly didn't show up at the first meeting because we didn't know about it. And this is the only time we've had to come since that time. As far as I know, you haven't had a discussion about it since then. So this is the second meeting. And so we think that to fast track this by sending the letter was premature. And so what we're asking is that you really reconsider and understand how this is impacting us, and not provide any support for this particular project.
Just to be clear, it was not fast tracked. That was pretty par for the course, pretty normal for these kinds of things. They come to us, they ask for a letter of support a couple of weeks before their package is due to the state, and very few of them are actually successful. So there was no special attention paid to this project to speed it up, slow it down, or do anything different than the normal course of business for these kinds of
They
things.
actually came 3 times, once for a work session, then for a council meeting, and then a second council meeting because they wanted to discuss a follow-up issue. So they were before council 3 times before the letter was written.
Which is actually more than usual.
So they were before the council 3 times?
Yes.
but they weren't on the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, they were.
they were.
So if I go back and look at your agenda, I
Yes.
will find
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah,
that
if you'll
this-
give the city clerk your email, she will send those to you.
Okay, I've looked online at the agendas.
Okay.
She knows where everything is.
And maybe there might have been an addendum to the published agenda?
No.
Shouldn't, no, never.
I think there may have been, Pearl may not have been on there one time with the question, because it was.
The last
it was a
time they
question.
came, we added Mr. Tyree because he had been to the previous council meeting and had an additional question of council.
He was added, he wasn't on the public agenda.
The one that was initially published.
Very last one.
He was
He
added.
was added.
And then when he came, I didn't know what
That
it was
was one
about.
of the three.
That was the third time he came.
Yeah.
The first two were
times,
on the agenda.
Work
They were-
session,
First one.
then council meeting agenda, and then a third time as an add-on.
But how it came about was, it was Pearl. It wasn't really what it was about in the agenda. It was just PIRHL.
And it was misspelled.
It was not even explained what it was, so when I got the agenda, I didn't know really what it was
Yeah.
until I got to the meeting.
Until we got here and got the packet.
See, so it needs to be, I guess, explain more what the item is about, because when I got to the meeting, I didn't know what it was about till he made his presentation.
Mr. Stevenson, you're going to be the point man to let these folks know
Yes.
anything
Yes,
upcoming?
I have some contact information and I'm taking some notes.
Super. Can you also let them know and keep an eye on the planning and zoning agenda to see if this, when this comes up? They're
Yeah,
notified
because
and
he has to go before the
well ahead
planning
of
and
time.
zoning.
Okay. And to you folks, you good people, please stay together with this, okay? Don't lose your focus.
And
if
come
you can-
more often
If you can get
to
more
the
people
meeting.
if you can get more people to join with you, to have this common effort, please do.
I even believe he said he didn't need our support. Is that what he said? Originally, he said he didn't need our support.
Well, they can apply without that support, but they get
He can
additional
apply with
points
that-
if,
he can apply with
on their
the letter of
application,
support.
which gives them a better chance of being successful in getting funding if they have that support. So, yeah, he could still do it without our support. That's. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Have a good evening.
Anything else from anybody? Okay, thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
My computer's on update 44.
I'm sorry.